Good evening. Welcome to the Lapeer Community School Board of Education meeting for May the 1st. I can't believe it's May already. This meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I understand we have some guests that are going to help us tonight. Mrs. Taylor?
Yes.
I can be at the podium.
We have our 5th grade students who help us with our flag corps. It's one of our leadership roles at Mayfield, and they lead us, take care of our flag, the handling of the flag. Each trimester there's 3 that are chosen, and so I asked them to help us lead our pledge tonight. So, whenever you're ready, take it away, boys and girls. This is Isabella Baranski, we've got Joshua Cableman, and we have Dallas Evans to help us out.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hello, let's begin tonight's meeting. Let's wait. We'll begin with our presenting school Mayfield, Mr. Wandering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd reintroduce Mayfield Principal Sarah Taylor, and she's going to share with us an update on goal number 2.
Yes, we are. Okay, I'm going to introduce our teachers here tonight that are helping us present. First of all, thanks for having us here. We've got Sarah Wood, who's a learning coach, and we've got Lisa Madden, also a learning coach. And then we've got our 2 first grade teachers, Shelly Gorgioni and Michelle Roselle, and then our 2nd grade teacher, Patty Shable, here to help with the presentation tonight. So thanks for having us. We actually will be representing Board Goal 21A, which is in response to, it represents or embraces this idea that there's research behind small group instruction. And so our literacy essential practices tell us that when we can provide students with small group instruction and individualized instruction, we can increase literacy achievement. And so this particular board goal addresses one of those types of small group instruction, which is guided reading. Guided reading is one way that we address literacy instruction each and every day in our classrooms. And our presentation will represent how our K-5 teachers take on guided reading consistently and effectively daily. And we will speak to how this works within a Tier 1 situation, which is our whole class, as well as our Tier 2 and 3, which is our intervention supports. So we will start our presentation out with Sarah Wood, our learning coach, to speak to how Mayfield addresses the particular guided reading program at Mayfield consistently.
Hi. Hi. So at Mayfield, all of our K-5 teachers use guided reading within their Tier 1 instruction and reading workshop time. So that means that all of the students in that classroom are being seen by the teacher anywhere from 2 to 5 times per week, depending on their level of support that they need. And we also offer guided reading within our MTSS time. So MTSS is offered to our kids that are reading below level, and we have it in Tier 2 and in Tier 3. In Tier 2, they are seen by their teachers anywhere from 3 to 5 times per week for 15 minutes. And in Tier 3, they are seen by somebody, it might be their classroom teacher, it might be somebody doing interventions with them, like the parapro. Mrs. Parcell does a lot of interventions with some of our kids. It might be a learning coach, and they are seen 5 days a week for 15 to 30 minutes. So we have Mrs. Shable, who's here, that she's going to talk about how she takes care of figuring out when her kids are going to be seen each week based on the need of support that they have.
Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to show you a copy of my schedule real quick. You don't see it up close except the coloring. The coloring represents my media students, so I have them being that 5 days a week by myself, and my Mrs. Marcel back there, who does wonders, by the way. And the groups that are twice a week are the other colors. I have one once a week group, that is my highest group, and I meet with them really just once a week. One time I give them their reading to read, and then this day is the day we get together and discuss. Okay. The other 2 that are colored, the pinks, blues, and greens, are either students that are at level or above level. But in order to maintain that at level or above level, you gotta keep pushing them always. So I meet with them twice a week also. And I'm doing this during my literacy block and during literacy center time. So it's a way of figuring out how to get to all of them as much as I can. And when I'm looking at my grouping, I look at their abilities, I look at their needs. Is it a fluency problem that we need to deal with? Is it a comprehension need that we need to deal with? And so we're looking at how can I best meet based on what their needs are. I might have several kids at the same level, but some need the fluency work, some need the comprehension, so you split them accordingly that way.
How many kids do you have in your class that you have to try to work with all?
27. And it's a struggle, and I can't promise you that this schedule happens every day, or I should say every week. The yellows for sure, but you throw in assemblies or field trips or party day, and you know it gets thrown. But for the most part, we try to maintain as best as we can because that's what they need, and the push. You know, always got to keep these groups that I'm meeting twice a week. If you're not pushing, they're not moving, and we need to keep them moving forward.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Mayfield teachers implement guided reading effectively. In order to be effective, we need to be looking at research. So our teachers are using a research-based model, either Jan Richardson or Linda Dorn. So that, and that, by the way, is over 40 years of research and what's effective with reading. So that's a component, but also that's the science of it. The art is now, is obviously having, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but some teachers have been teaching a while, a few years. However, we still want to pursue the art of our practice. So through professional development and through the coaching that Sarah and I implement for our coaching cycles, for example, Patty and I have done a couple of cycles where we're co-teaching and we're looking at, okay, we have these kids here, looking at our data, how can we move them a little bit more forward and looking at, Patty and I have looked at text-dependent questions, we've looked at text structure and features, and then we might do some planning together, we debrief together, and talk about how students are doing. So that's the effective components, and then Michelle will talk a little bit about the third bullet.
Okay, so on the third bullet, during the guided reading, our second day, we're always doing assessments on one of the students, if not two of the students. And with all these assessments, we bring them together during our PLC meetings, and we decide then, we go through the data, and we decide if groups need to be broken apart, or if we need to make new groups, or if they've reached their goal, or our goal for them, through that cycle. And we also, go ahead.
So another way that we do guided reading effectively is among the first grade teachers, we share our students. So we tend to group them according to ability or to their priority needs, and then we just group them so that we can share them. So as Natalie's class, as for Joni's class, and my own, we just put them together. And at first grade, the levels that they need to be at, they come in sometimes at a level 4, and they need to be to an 18. So there's a huge span of levels that need to be hit in those needs.
And it works out really nice this year because we do have a smaller classroom, and there's 3 of us this year, so we can get to a lot more kids.
So now we've talked a little bit about consistently and effectively. We're going to share with you the 5 different components of guided reading. So you might be seeing a little bit of video, and each of us will be sharing one of those components with you.
So in the first video is word work. That's one of the components of guided reading. The purpose is to teach and review sight words that are frequently found in reading. And This video is going to show you some of the hands-on and visual strategies that the teacher, this is a kindergarten teacher, that she's using to get children to learn words.
What word is that? You like what word? When? With. You fix it. You fix it. Oh, no, I'm sorry, my fault. Good, what word is that? When? What word?
So that is the reality of teaching a small group in a kindergarten classroom. You can hear all the background. Thank you. Okay, the next component in guided reading is the book introduction, or giving the child the gist of the story. So the purpose is to orient the students to the new book and ensuring that all of the tricky parts are taken out so that they can have a successful chance at reading a book. So we always want the child to be successful when they're reading. In this video, you're going to see the teacher provide the child with a key word that they may not know because the word is calf, C-A-L-F. And she's going to give it to the student so that that child can have some prior knowledge about what a calf is and have success with reading the book.
What do you know this is in the picture, Ian? Baby giraffe. A baby giraffe? Yeah. And a mom giraffe. Oh, Levi just noticed that we have a key word on this page, and that's exactly why we came to this page. What is a baby giraffe called? You're looking at me. What is a baby giraffe called? A cub. Not a cub, but a calf. This one is calf. I wanted to point it out because you can't sound this word out, you need to know it. And Levi pointed out that that is a key word on that page, so you need to make sure you know that. The baby giraffe is called a calf. Okay? All right, go back to the title page.
There we go. All right, the next component that we're going to talk about is running records. So I have an example for you of a running record. This is actually from my reading recovery class that I'm in right now. A running record is a formative assessment that students are given when they're in a guided reading group. It's actually also a component of the DRA. In the running record, the teacher has the student read the book aloud to them. And as the student is reading, the teacher is making check marks for every correct word that the student says. If the student makes an error in their reading, the teacher writes the word that the student said on the paper, and then draws a line, and underneath of that line writes the word that should have been said in the text. So you make it through the book. After the book is finished, you have a little conversation with the student about it, and then after the guided reading lesson, you would analyze the running record. So, looking at the one that you have in front of you, there are some errors in that very first line, and then off to the side, there are the letters MSV. That stands for meaning, structure, and visual. So you're analyzing the error that the student had to see if the error made sense in the story, if it structurally sounded correct as they were reading, and if they were using some sort of visual information to help them figure out that word. If the student has the self-correction, which is on the back side of that first page, there are two columns with MSBs. So you analyze not only the error, but you analyze what you think the student did to self-correct the word. After you analyze it using all of the MSBs, you total up how many errors and how many self-corrections the student had, and on the front of it, you're figuring out what their accuracy percentage was. You're also figuring out their error ratio, and you're figuring out their self-correction rate. So on this one, it says 1 to 3.25 for the self-correction ratio. That means for every 3.25 errors that were in the story, they self-corrected at one time. So then the teachers use the information, and they write up a little summary that tells what the student was using while they were doing the reading. So in this example, the student was neglecting visual information, so that means they might not have been looking at the entire word. They might have only been looking at the beginning of the word. They might have only been looking at the end of the word, but they had some sort of error in the word, and it was a visual thing. They might have used just the initial sound and got the rest of the word wrong. Generally in this one, the errors reflected meaning and structure, meaning that every error that they said, it made sense within the story. So they were still holding the meaning of the story while they were reading. And this one had several insertions and omissions, meaning that the student wasn't really paying attention to the words that were on the page. They might have added some words into the story or neglected saying some of the words. And this one says rereads as if the problem solved. So this is the teacher analyzing what the student has done to make sure that they're getting through the text and helping them be successful with it, to help develop a routine processing system.
What grade level was this first?
This one is an example from my reading recovery class, so yes, it would be a first grade.
In this particular, when they analyze these training records, it really drives what the next guided reading group might look like and what the topic, the focus should be. And so that really drives how we instruct each lesson, each guided reading lesson.
It helps to individualize it for each student.
Okay, is this something that you guys developed?
No.
Oh, this is typically done on the second day, so we would go through a book on that first day, have that teaching of maybe that word or whatever the focus has been, and then that second day they would read through it, and you can see the transfer of what happened from that first day.
The difference between a DRA and this one is that a DRA is a book that they haven't read before, and this one is a book that they've read one time before.
How long have you been using this?
This has
Since the
been
beginning
around
of the
since
year?
our MLPP assessments and our training from over 10 years ago. So MLPP has been in our district for quite some time, but now it's become a natural part of how we assess the DRA, and we assess more regularly within our guided reading format.
It's required for all students that are scoring at that 20% down below for the third grade reading also.
Are you able to track the progress over time? then?
Yes, that is the purpose of when we have an intervention group, we have cycles. So we have kids in cycles, and we have a pre and we have a post. So we're watching to see that growth in maybe that particular topic or over time with the DRE score.
And generally, within a reading group, if you can have a student, if they're independent, passing at a 95%, about 5 times in a row, we say they're probably ready for the next level. So we're tracking them that way too.
So Patty's going to talk a little bit about the book discussion, which is a huge piece to a guided reading, is how the kids converse and speak to the topic. Or obviously, when we read a book, we want them making meaning, we want them comprehending what they read, and really the book discussion is a part of that process.
So remember on my schedule, there was one orange, my higher group. This is them. And usually when we're at the on level or above level groups, they are kind of beyond the fluency part. They don't necessarily need decoding. They don't necessarily need the phrasing. But they need to dig deeper in their comprehension with the higher level thinking skills that are required on like the onset test. So we're trying to get to that level of knowledge with them through these discussions. So this is them. I just want to make one point, you won't see it, but during this group, I had to get up and leave to take care of a problem, and they carried on. They carried on. So it was, that's what we're going for, is can they carry on, can they have that group conversation?
Maybe no one's keeping.
And they're playing.
If you're non-fiction. Non-fiction. In non-fiction text teachers, what do you talk about?
There's catching the photographs, food chain.
What, actually, the food chain itself is not a non-fiction text teacher, but what is that, the food chain is?
Kind of like a web line.
It's similar to a timeline, not exactly. This would be called a flow chart. A flow chart, using
That's
arrows
a
to pass it on to the next section. You have paragraphs?
There's there's a title and then there's
What do you call those?
subtitles.
Subtitles or headings, right? Okay. I heard captions and pictures, right? What's this did you know part? What is that called?
It's like back.
Fun fact, backslash.
And then you know what's in fact it has little
Bullets?
Yeah.
The bullets? Mm-hmm. Good.
Okay, so here is like an example of the writing that we incorporate into the guided reading. And this is done on the second day. This is after the book discussion. The student has read the story, they understand the story, and now we're asking them to transfer it into writing. So this is difficult. This is a first grade example here. But it gives us, as a teacher, we can like correct so many things right there with that student one-on-one in a very quick amount of time. So sometimes we ask them to write to a prompt, and sometimes we will give them a dictated sentence. This was to the prompt, write a part that you liked in the story. Well, or no, how was the duck acting in the story? So he writes, the duck was being mean to the rabbit. He said no to the rabbit. So what we're checking for, we can check letter formation. Are there spaces? No. And the teacher, you can't, just overwhelm the child either and say, okay, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But when we see, like, we're working on vowel pairs, so when he wrote men there, he was being men to the rabbit. We brought in, and I said, we need to correct that. When you hear where he could, we do periods, capital letters. So this is just a good screening of what he's taking away, what he knows, and how he can transfer it to his writing.
So you can see a lot is jam-packed in either a 20, 30-minute guided reading lesson. We're putting in word work, we're putting in book discussion, we're putting in comprehension, we're putting in fluency, we're putting in lots of different things. So this is a jam-packed session full of information, and it's supposed to be quick so that the kids get it and then they move on.
And it usually stays with them.
All right, so my orange group again, top, and this coincidentally happened today. So right now this is unplanned. But I was giving a DRA reading test to the little girl in the pink jacket there in the corner. And I noticed that my group, I had given them their cards to read. Today was their day to read the card only, and then we would discuss later. But I had told them, guys, I may not be able to meet with you this week because it's DRA testing season. So I need to do some testing. I have to take some of that time to make sure the testing is done for all the students. And as I'm looking around, I noticed them meeting in their group, carrying on their own conversation. No direction from me whatsoever, other than they read. Here's your thing, your text will read.
We didn't have sound because we wanted to watch just the body language in this discussion and how it's, and what they're doing.
So Aubrey in the middle there in the orange shirt, she's kind of the leader of the pack, and she was taking over and being the teacher. And I heard her, you really can't hear it on the video what they were saying, but I did hear her say at one point, yes, that is correct. And so later, after this was done, we're back in the classroom, so this is in the literacy center. I said to Aubrey, so Aubrey, because I had told one of the other students, Evan, he said, well, can we discuss it on our own? I said, you bet. But that was like not really in relation to this. I think this was an Aubrey-led thing. But I said, yes, I'll take out some questions and then you guys can have that conversation on Friday. And so I said to Aubrey, what questions did you ask so I don't repeat those same questions in the group for Friday's discussion when you guys get together? And she said, and I quote, I asked them what text structure the text was set up in. We've been learning about text structure. We've covered problem and solution and question and answer so far. It was a question and answer structure. And I said, what else? Anything else? And she said, yes. I asked, how does the chart, this is the text they were reading about an interview with a web reporter, and there's a chart right here with snowflakes. How does the chart help you understand how the temperature affects the type of snowflake that's made? And that's another kind of big question we've been working on with our, can you pull out the race paper down there? I forgot to grab it. With our passage-based rating. We have an acronym that the district is using for them to help answer. They have to read the passage and then answer a question in writing based on it. So we've been practicing this, and that's one of the types of questions we've been asking is, what kind of text feature is there, and how can it help you to understand with the text itself what you're reading about? And so those were the questions they came up with completely on their own. So bottom line is, we want that student-centered learning, and I think that was happening today with that group. Minus me. I was out.
So kids they're used to this structure. It's something that happens in every classroom. And so we thought it would be nice to end our presentation with, what do you like most about guided reading, or what do you think about guided reading? So we've got a few students that would like to share that. Whoops.
I like that we use suffix and prefix. Looking at words and figuring them out. When we read a book, because we get to read new stories. And today we read Giraffes again today. Our guided reading is learning about different things. My favorite part is writing about the book. Laying out words. I like answering questions. Because I like to spell words and sound out the words. We have these blue trays and we have our cards and we have sight words on them. And we use letters on it and we take them off and we fill the words on the tray.
So that is really some of the pieces that we try to work with every day with guided reading within Mayfield. This is quote from Jan Richardson. She's the model that Lisa spoke to that we use to help us effectively carry on guided reading throughout our whole day. And we welcome any of you to come in and check out any guided reading group that we've got K-5. And thank you for allowing us to speak to this today. Did you have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions, just some comments. As your board partner, I don't get up as often as I would like, but I've been up for the spelling bee. I read the Shabel's class. Very impressed. And on a personal note, congratulations to you, Mrs. Forgione, on becoming grandmother. I'm sure Terry makes a great father. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. With the little ones, do you ever have, because you have lots of kids and you don't have much time, do you ever have an opportunity where as part of this, actually reading aloud to them so they hear cadence and
Every day. Every day.
good?
That's
So-
a priority.
That is,
Yeah.
and really, when you look at a balanced literacy approach, the small group instruction, the guided reading is just one piece of that. And then there's your writing workshop, and then there's, within our reading workshop block, we have our guided reading. Within our MTSS, we have our guided reading. But read aloud time is definitely an opportunity to show expression and fluency, and that's just another piece that we incorporate into that block or throughout our day.
It's a favorite. It is teachers and the students.
Yeah, we can bring in vocabulary, we can bring in a lot of teaching points through that real loud.
And then do the kids generally have fun with this as they work their way through it?
Oh.
I had a professor at U of M who used to tell us that you couldn't stop a kid from reading until you put them in school. And he actually believed that, but he said you need to make fun. And I see that kids are enjoying it. Have the kids repeat back things like the questions they asked on their own.
Yes.
Okay, they're how old?
Like 7th grade, 7 and 8 years old.
It just cracks me up having a book discussion on first grade.
Yeah.
You're still trying to count.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing. We appreciate everything you've done on behalf of our kids. Again, I know you have too many kids, not enough time, and too few resources to do it. But once again, you managed to do it and do it well. So thank you very much.
Every time I see one of these presentations, I think about the building blocks, you know, our product, if you will, is at the end, right? And all of the building blocks you're doing so early on now, I can't wait to see, you know, the future here, what's going to happen. It's going to have a tremendous influence on where they're at when they get to high school.
Well, we've become more diagnostic about how we approach reading, and we've become reliant on those assessments to tell us what to do next. And I think that's how literacy's really evolved, is we have a standard of care like a doctor would. We address literacy in that same approach.
And I think, going back to the question, Mr. Nolan, about enjoyment, I think in the small group, they are receiving the attention, and that is part of it. You know, I have one boy that every time it's, you know, I'm done explaining the directions for the whole class. Are we meeting? Are we meeting? You know, so they're there. They're wanting that attention. They want that small group focus. Yes.
Well, and it's another way that you show them care, which for a lot of them, that's all they want.
Just know they're important.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great stuff, ladies.
Okay, next is public comment. We do not have any public comment cards. We're moving on to reports. Tonight we have 3 reports. We'll begin with personnel committee. Mr. Owens.
Thank you. We met on April 16th. We had 4 basic topics that we covered. The first was just a brief presentation from Mr. Reader about budget projections for the coming year from the state. And sort of the general understanding is at that point that we really didn't have much information and that we all needed to stay tuned. Hopefully we'll hear some more tonight, and I know we will in the coming weeks, but it'll be a little different process this year with the state than we have in the past. Next we moved on to actually review an extension, proposed extension of Mr. Rader's contract. And I hope you all share the sentiments of our committee. We all agree that Mark has more than met the requirements of the job and has certainly achieved the goals that are set forth in his contract. And so we're recommending that we approve the extension of his contract later on in today's meeting. Then we talked about Matt's contract, because it's a constant thing, as you know, and it's a year-long process of the review of things. But we looked at different things that are required by MASB now, and in relation to what we had in the past were sort of merit-based items that we wanted him to achieve, goals we wanted him to achieve. Because of the switch in the design from what we had in the past to the MASB model, it's sort of the goals that we had are encompassed within the new model. So it's kind of redundant, and we're going to recommend in the future that that piece of this contract be taken out. The demonstration of the goals and things that we had set forth for Matt are in all of the items that he's presented to us all year long. I mean, so we can see readily the types of things that he's doing moving us toward those goals. And then finally, Kim had always the unenviable job of, we've just finished one cycle, so now we're launching into the next review cycle. So we will see things in the upcoming months, and we will start the process with Matt again.
Despite what Kim says, I think she enjoys constantly evaluating me. That's not pretending she doesn't.
And that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Any questions? We'll move on to finance and ops. Mrs. Novak.
We had 4 items as well. The first one being bond bids. Mark Meisner reviewed his recommendation for the bids. We have 2 packages of schools, package A and package B, so we're staying with the same companies. B&B Lawn for package A and B would be BW Lawn Care. And then we reviewed the school budget as well with Mark Rader, and again, he reviewed 4 different scenarios. There'll be more information forthcoming as soon as the May revenue conference is held. And then we discussed food service renewal. Mark Rader explained that the food service contracts are regulated by the state of Michigan and that we must go out to bid every 5 years, which we did in 2015, and then we renewed them annually. We received approval from MDA for the 2019-20 proposed Chartwell 1-year contract renewal, and then we were recommending to go with Chartwell's 5th and final year in the 2015 bid award. And we're recommending that we, again, renew this contract at this meeting. And then we had a 403B update. Mark, again, reviewed the committee the information regarding that we adopted a resolution on the district's 403B tax sheltered annuity plan. He explained that all changes are required by federal statutes and do not significantly alter any portion of the current plan. And that's it.
Any questions? I have one question on food service renewal. When do we actually go out for bids?
Next year, right?
So next year we'll have to go back out for bid.
It's 5 years.
When is that though? You know, when?
We'll have to do it in January,
Oh,
so that we leave plenty of time for not only bid responders, but then for us, remember, after we get bid responses, we have to submit to MDE. MDE formally has to approve it, like these annual renewals, send it back to us before the board can actually accept the bid recommendations. So we'll start it in January next year.
All right, let's move on to teaching, learning, and technology. Mrs. Peabody.
Teaching, Learning, and Technology Committee met this past Monday, April 29th, with Trustee Putnam and Board President Keller, President with Mr. Radner, Michelle Radford, Danielle Corval, Casey Allen, Jamie Ratliff, and Mary Moss. So we also got an update from Mark on the different scenarios with the budget and the uncertainty of it from the state level, the plan of the district going forward, based on the unknowns. So then, we're going to be involved in a Title I on-site review that Michelle and Casey Allen showed with us, which the process has changed, which is very positive. So our elementary schools involved in this, Mayfield, Lynch, and Schickler, but we're working with Elm City, K-Pac, Young, and Sandusky School District. So the MD is new this year. They've given the districts a document to look at and use as we go through this audit process. And that was very nice instead of being blindsided or, gotcha moment. So this review is going on March 2019 through March 2020. So there'll be a district audit and a building audit. So there is a field service representative available to them for consultation, and then we'll get a written report in March of 2020. Correct? All right. Then the next is the family engagement policy needs to be updated, and Casey Allen did a great job of that. Found any I that needs to be dotted, T crossed, and so you have a copy of that, and we recommended that we waive the first reading of that tonight. So that we're in compliance with the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, and every student succeeds after 2015. So, and then the exciting thing is Jamie Ratliff was with us and gave us, this is really exciting, for the STEM program. They had gotten a grant, so we will now be introducing STEM to our kindergarten, first and second graders. So this was very, very exciting to hear, and with the robotics going on and all this excitement for STEM. So that's just really exciting at Mayfield and Murphy.
They're doing the MLPBL.
Okay.
PLTW will be kindergarten, first, second,
Okay.
and fifth.
So that was exciting. And then it keeps getting better. The Marshall Plan, I learned a lot about that. It's been a very tedious process for a grant for that Jamie's been working on with community schools, colleges, other ISDs, and they've gone through 2 rigorous parts of this. And so we got to the grant submission process. And they found out last Friday, and if they get that grant, that would be a $500,000 grant. So that's very exciting, and I guess in 10 days they have to submit it. So lots of exciting things going on with STEM, getting grants. So that's what we talked fast, but got a lot done. So, any questions for me on that? Or anyone, Summer, you want to add anything else? Mike?
Just that we reviewed also 2 other overnight field trip requests
Yeah.
that we want to bring to the board for approval.
Yeah. And I didn't see that on the second page. So one is the golf, the boys varsity golf, regionals, and then cross country. The golf is in May, next weekend, May 10th and 11th, and the golfing teams should be very proud to do very well. And then girls cross country travel in August. So we're recommending these be approved tonight. Any other questions?
Just to piggyback on the comment on the STEM there, it's just like what I was talking about, the building blocks, you know? STEM now starts at kindergarten level. I just want to be there when these kindergartners are graduating. I'm not going to be here, but I'm listening.
Uh-oh, you heard it. It's recorded, millions of people see that on the live stream.
That's right. No, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
All of these wonderful things that are happening, and they're happening early.
And, you know, I asked, I was like, Jamie, I asked her, have you ever done a grant writing class? And she's like, no. And I'm like, well, you're getting some good experience, and let's just cheer them on. They get this $500,000 grant. That'd be awesome. That'd just be awesome. So they have a 10-day turnaround to get that submitted. So that would be awesome.
I'm working on it.
So there, so it was just exciting things in that meeting that night. It's exciting. Hear all the neat stuff going on.
Okay, we will move on to presentations. We have the budget development 3, Mr. Laundry.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time we'll introduce Mr. Rader. Our development process continues. We've had 2 budget managers meeting, and as you know, the board was presented to already about kind of some of the variables that we use for projections that are embedded into our forecast. We do have a bit more information since the last time we met with the subcommittee and shared some of those variables with you. Things are coming into clearer focus, but Mark drove back today from the MSBO conference and reiterated again by our lobbyists and folks that are in the know on Lansing that we probably won't see a finalized budget until October. So again, the forecasting model that we use, the variables that we embed in the model, the accuracy of those is really important because we won't have answers before our first data check comes in October. So with that, I'll hand over to Mark and share the update with you.
Good evening. We were hoping to get the House version today, we did. So all 3 committees, what you've heard in the last 7-10 business days, a lot of it's repeated. There's a few more interjections that I learned yesterday by both some of the folks at the Senate Fiscal Agency, Captain Summers, and also the MASA lobbyist Peter shared with us, which is, as Matt already kind of alluded to, is not optimistic information, quite frankly. But it does start to triangulate to give us the information we need in order to develop the budget. So what's the first thing? We've talked about this many times. We got to start with what we control, our local stuff. It's our enrollment, our projections, our line items. We work with revenues, we work with expenses. So we're working the expense side because we really can't figure out the revenue side with any certainty today. On the enrollment, we've had a good year, very good year. We're up about 30, some adjustments, it's slightly below 30 after we finalized the audit came in, but we're up 30, which has broke our trend from the last 6 years of being down. That's a good thing, but it doesn't create a new trend for us. And you can see the 4 bullets as we've talked before in the committees, those main areas, and the bottom one that I added is growing. So we've got about 25, 26 early middle college students this year, which means the 5th-year seniors that we're getting the foundation. And next year we're on track to have 50, and that program continues to grow. So that is filling in, as well as our schools of choice and the expansion of virtual program and the continuation of homeschool partnership growth. We probably don't give enough background on this, but it's not just the electives, but it's homeschool partnership. Kids who come in and maybe the first year do electives, and then second year they move into a full-time FTE with us doing virtual. So we are getting plenty of benefits out of those 4 areas that are helping ease that change of the loss of our students. So what do we use? Where do we go? So we settled in, as we've said in the committees, at minus 125. Now, folks would say, well, why aren't we going even less than that since we were plus 30 this year? Part of that is we always want to be conservative. We don't want to go too high, because if we go too high, we actually budget. Wherever the budget is, it's actually our projection, but if the board goes and authorizes that, we don't have the revenues, we have to immediately come back and readjust that budget. So we're trying to always make sure we have the right appropriation, as the technical term is, to operate with that. So we've settled in at minus 125. Do we think it'll be better? Both Matt and I have stated it in the committees and with the budget managers last Friday. Yes, we're optimistic we'll beat that number. But we're only into year 2 of this new trend, and so we're hoping. I know we've got plus 25, so I know we're 150 plus 25 in early middle college. So 125 is not a hard conservative number to get to. We probably can get down even further, but until we start to see late registrations for kindergarten in the summertime, then we'll be able to really ascertain what that number would be. And you'll see that reflected in the appropriation at the beginning of the year, December. So we've got a governor version of the school budget. We've got a Senate that came out last Wednesday, and House is supposed to be released this week, but it hasn't come out yet. The good and bad is we have 2 of the 3 points of the triangle. Let's go through all the good and the bad. So what's the good? The good is the governor started with $100 million. So remember, we've been doing a 2X formula for about the last 5-6 years in the 50, 75, 120, 150 range. Now all of a sudden, she jumped up to 180, but she changed from what we've seen for the last 12, 15 years, a 2X formula, to 1.5 formula. So $180 for us. But what she's changed is the next 3 items on the slide below, special ed, at-risk, and CTEs. What she's referring to, what you've heard referred to in the press as to a weighted average or a weighted formula. So the study that came out on adequacy funding stated we need to have a dollar amount for base student foundation and then weighted or differential funding mechanisms. And so you see the governor started to adopt that. So with special ed, she's actually raising the special ed reimbursement from 28.6 to 32.6. So who was around when Durant happened way back in the 90s? So the whole premise of Durant, was the state was not supplying and funding enough dollars. So this is 25 years in the making of us finally seeing some more dollars put towards the cost of special needs students. The at-risk, she's putting it in right into per pupil, and she's changing the dollar amount. There are charts that we'll see as we come into the June when we have a better idea of what the reality is of the numbers. But those add up to some pretty substantial numbers for the district when you see the amount she's putting, $720 to $894 per student. So instead of doing the categorical like you'll see in the Senate here, I'll get to in a second, she's putting it all right into funding per the student that meets the qualification of that category. And then CTE, that's moving really substantial. That's an increase of $487 per pupil. It's currently down in the $50 to $60 range for those programs that are eligible to be reimbursed in the CTE category. So, does it look good? Yes, it looks great. Now let's jump to the Senate side. Senate's even better on the foundation formula, 270, but they're retaining the 2X formula. Now you see the next three items for the Senate. They are not moving to the weighted formula. They are retaining the current categorical and historical categorical. And you see they're just adding dollar amounts into those categorical or sections of the State Aid Act. So increasing special ed by 30 million. And you see both at the at-risk, and there's an element in CTE because some of the readings and interpretations come out daily on this, that they're putting money in there, but they're putting money in for one-time capital expenditures, both in at-risk and there's also one for CTE. But there's not a lot of specificity as to what would be qualified and what that means at this point in time. And then the MIPSers, which is always essential to us, they're doing both the same. The governor and the Senate are using the same formula, which is they changed the actuarial assumption rate of return. So we talked about it was 8%, it's now 7.5%. Of course, changing that cost millions to the MIPSers fund. They are adding, I believe it's about $83 million into the funding to hold districts harmless, because if we didn't get it through the front end on state aid, we're off top state aid, get the money in 5 days later, get the check to the state, we'd have to do it on our employer rate. Remember, I already said our employer rate's going up 3.4%. So the employer rate's still going up, but that's to do fund the elements of there's more retirees. There are now over 250,000 retirees. There's more retirees pulling retirement out of the system than there's active workers contributing to the system for the first time. That's history.
So if any of our teachers joining us this evening had planned on retiring, you can't. Sorry.
So this is the 270, that's the highest they've proposed in a while, right?
Highest since way back in the pre-recession, about 2002 or 3 was.
And they're higher than the governors.
Correct. Now here is,
It's kind of exciting.
here's the rest of the story. Both of those models, both of those budget models are predicated on the January revenue conference that had optimistic revenues. School aid fund through March was down from the January revenue conference by $133 million. So on May 23rd, when the May revenue conference comes, we more than likely won't see a whole lot of movement, even if the House comes out with their School Aid Act here in the next week, because they're all waiting to see what the revenue is going to be. They're going to wait and see what tax collections from April 15th were. They're going to see what the sales are for the sales tax, because sales tax funds 60% of the school aid fund. So it's good news. We're seeing new monies, but it's still, there's skepticism because it's based on numbers that really aren't reality today.
And their year goes till September, so they have some time technically.
And they have some time, right? Right.
So that's what I'm saying, they can wait to see because it's still speculation.
The other thing that's encouraging though is it shows at least to me a mindset shift that maybe.
That's what I was saying.
Somebody's thinking education might be important thing.
You stole my last point.
I was gonna
That was
say,
that was the
I'm
optimistic
excited.
message yesterday
So is there
in the sessions.
any inclination out of the House what they're going to do, which direction?
There's no
they're gonna go?
inclination.
No?
There was some discussion that they were going to do a joint release, like,
Correct.
but that didn't happen.
That didn't
So
happen.
I don't see it being too far afield from what
But,
the Senate.
but in this Senate thing, they took 45-cent gas tax out.
Correct.
They took that totally out of their budget.
Right, 'cause
The governor has it in hers, but they don't have it in theirs. I mean, this is just school, but in general.
The governor's 45-cent gas tax
Right.
is what allows the bullet point at the bottom to eliminate the $500 million from the general fund that's being used today. So that gas tax really is backfilling that $500 million in order to allow her to fund all those items on the screen. The Senate's version does not use any new dollars from any new tax it really just, there's two other cuts of about 140 million total. And so they're adding 323 million to the School Aid Act, but they're doing it through just shifting priorities and not new dollars. So they're working from the basis, there's not going to be new money.
But even without the money, they're proposing an increase.
Correct.
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, so mine's what you said, mine's.
So what you're saying though is her gas tax isn't all going to go to the roads. It's going to go to funding school funding. Is that correct?
Not exactly.
Oh,
I
okay.
gotta think how to answer you. Her tax, it's very convoluted. There's currently a 26-cent gas tax.
Right.
The 26-cent gas tax that currently is levied is not being used for roads. It's being used for other elements in the general fund of the state's appropriation. This 45 cents would be dedicated for roads. The 26 cents, it would be 71 cents gas tax. The 26 cents will still be to fund other general fund items that have been funded for the previous years. What they did was they used that gas tax to fund, and that's why they're using school aid money, about 500 million a year. Actually, she does recommend taking about 400 million and giving it back to the school aid. That's how she's able to get $180 per student. But right now, 900 million goes to higher ed out of the school aid fund back to the general fund. She's retaining about 400 million of it to still pay to the community colleges. So it's a very convoluted shifting of dollars and buckets that you have to follow through. We've lost $4.5 billion in the last decade from the school aid fund to the general fund to fund colleges. We literally could give $1,000 a student to every student in every district in the state if that money hadn't been reshifted. So the revenues is key. You're right, Jan. Where the money's going to come from, and there's constant debate that they use the basis of 1974, that we are well below that tax level that we were. If we were at the 1974 tax level, again, we would generate, instead of $14 billion from the school aid fund, we generate $23 billion. We can almost double what we're putting in the school aid fund. But what number hasn't been shared is, what does that really mean to every taxpayer and every corporate taxpayer in the state? I'm guessing a pretty sizable increase, more than even 45 cents to folks when you equate that in gallons in your body when gas you use a year. So the numbers get thrown out there to try to get support because everyone says we need more money, and we do. The problem is we need more money in such large chunks. It's going to take large amounts of commitment by the taxpayers in order to produce that. And so far, there hasn't been the tolerance to show support for that statewide.
That's where
So now into the models that kind of lay out where we're at. So we built we call this the base and worst case. So this is our current operating budget adjusted for our normal trend of 150 students down, no foundation allowance increase. And those two new items that I explained, the salary benefit variance, that's really a turnover of staff. So that varies every year. It's grown in the last couple of years, but it's certainly depending on where they drop off the top of the scale, where we have to replace if they're critical positions. They don't know it's coming at the bottom, so the gap of savings is a lot smaller than necessarily a master's plus 30 and a BA 1 or 2. And then that position decline is actually the roll up. So as Michelle and Kim and the principals have rolled up students this year to next year, that really produces on paper around 4 teachers positions we could eliminate today, but don't focus on elimination because that's just on paper. And we still haven't got our kindergartners in, we still haven't figured out with other staff moving around and dealing with what's available with posting of positions. But we put it on the sheet so we could get some relief to our negative budget. So you see it results in negative 1.4 million operating deficit. Worst case scenario, taking our fund balance well below the 5% threshold that put us in year 1 of 2 years of below 5% and have to answer the treasury. So not really an option, but it's where we start from. Best case scenario, we go down only 100 students, as we stated earlier. We put $100 for the foundation allowance. That number is pretty well based, even though if you listen to some of the rhetoric out of Lansing, it tells us to use flat and zero, but there's enough money currently in the school aid fund carry over into next year, about $250 million that would generate and allow a $100 increase in the 2X formula for students. So that's where that basis and that number comes from. The salary budget variance, on the top side, you can see 900,000, so that's best case scenario, and 4 positions, as I just mentioned, would produce 400. So now all of a sudden you see negative 1.4 moves to a positive $500,000 addition to the fund balance in June of 20, and we move from 6.7 to 7.6.
Board goal is 10?
10. Most likely, 125 that are stated, the 100, take only half of that budget variance, take the 4 positions, that could be optimistic, but we put it in there to show that we'd be at 170. If you take, say, 2 of those net positions and say we only get 2 instead of 4, now you're pushing maybe 400,000 or 500,000 operating deficit for the year. So there's lots of elements that can move in there, but it gives you a reality of where it is in the 3 scenarios. And this just puts it together with what I just stated on the side. The main revenue accounts I already stated is going to be critical. Where's the revenues? If the revenues continue to stay down, you will see probably, that's why we're seeing the House hesitate on their proposal, because they're probably looking to go somewhere lower in case we can't fund it, we can't get a gas tax, we can't move the money around. This House will probably come in lower and hedge the bet that the revenues are not going to pick up, and we're going to have to adjust the revenues down for next year. Fund balance threshold below 5%. We know we want to avoid that, so all of our planning at the COLT level is to make sure we can add or at least keep our fund balance where it's at and not go into the declining state. I already talked about the schools of choice and incoming kindergartners. The last bullet is a big one, but it's hard to predict. So what's happening to gas tax? My example I'm giving. So we're at $2.99 today. I just came across from Grand Rapids today. So 3.5 weeks ago, gas was at $2.20. So we've moved up. Now the good news for our diesel fuel, it doesn't move like it does for us at the retail pump, but it'll probably move from the $1.94, $2 up to about $2.50. So we'll see an increase in our fuel for the buses. There's still always this threat of the utilities at the state level of taking away the caps and making it much more market driven. And then the insurances, we actually have good news there because we already know what the hard caps for 1/1/20 are going to be. So we already know our predictable increase, which is in the cost of living about 3%. So it's about 100,000, and we typically put about a 2% line in our benefits to increase. So we've got a number of those that we can predict what they're going to be to a confident level that we're building the budget with these numbers.
Can I ask a quick question? Bus, insurance on the buses, is that relative to like what we pay as far as,
No.
our insurance, or is it different?
So we belong to Maysville Insurance Pool. There's 28 of us districts in there. They range in size from Dearborn to very small districts. The formula, and I'm on the executive board, we've had many meetings this year, we just changed the formula to reflect 70% of the formula is your experience and your losses. So it's still the pool concept to get the pricing and the benefits, but we also don't want a district who has a lot of claims to impact others. The problem with the insurance world is what's going on in the last 5 years. Every year we have multiple major disasters, and they are driving up the insurance premiums across the board. There's only about 4 major underwriters in the country who cover all this for all of us: cities, townships, school districts, universities. We had Travelers, who underwrites part of our policies for our group, give us a 20% increase in premiums this year. And so when I was at the meeting and the conference back in March in St. Louis, they said, we don't care. Our experience loss rate is the lowest in the state of Michigan, less than 1% as a pool. They've lost so many billions of dollars across the country, the wildfires in California, the hurricanes down south. They are just spreading that out amongst everyone. So that's why I have that bullet up there, because those are things that are kind of sleeper. And until we get to the renewal time of the year like we are now, we don't see those. The good news is, because our district experience rate is low, we're probably only going to see a slight, maybe $1,000, $5,000 increase in our insurances for the year, which is great.
But if they fix the state of Michigan car insurance, that's when will it affect possibly the public?
It will, because we pay just like
That's what I'm, okay.
you and I pay. We pay that $180, that jumped to $220. We have about 90 vehicles that are in there.
So by a small amount.
By a small amount, but it does impact us. So this is just a summary. This is more of what the board will see when we go to do the final in June budget proposals. You see the revenue and expense. The middle one, the 1920, is really where it would show up at 2.4, and then you see the two variables that we added at the bottom to show you the fund balance come back to 3.2, which correlates to the slide before. So this is just a different viewpoint of the previous slide. So as I stated, we're waiting here for about 20 days till we get to the revenue conference and see where that happens. We're waiting for the House, and once we have that House, we'll be in a much better position to understand. Now, what we heard yesterday from 3 of the major leading folks who gave credible information on Lansing, we won't probably see a school aid budget until October. And if anything's an indication of the political strife that is going on in Lansing, so yesterday the Senate passed the snow relief bill, and the Democrats immediately pulled back to take away immediate effect. It died. The House, just an hour ago, I just looked at it after I left Matt's office because we thought nothing happened. An hour ago, the House sent it back to the Senate to give them a second bite at the apple to try to correct that. But right now, the posture is they're not going to do anything with that. So if that's an indication on that much smaller item, when you really think about the dollar impact to the state, I don't think we're hopeful we're going to see a budget before July 1. So we'll be adopting based on the new recommendations in June of where we're at.
It makes sense to be your chat bills and the gas taxes and I know that's that. So I don't see that being in the House's budget.
We're back to the middle.
This is how we used to operate.
Matt had to quote earlier, we're back to the grand old days of 12 plus years ago
Yeah.
of not having a budget.
Mark, on a smaller scale, is there any language changes on FTE for homeschool? Are they looking at 0.75? Is any thought on it?
There hasn't been with regards to that yet. There are some nuances. I'll go through it because I just got some information yesterday at the conference as to some of these little elements like that that are indicating, yes, they are looking to change some elements like that. It wasn't the FTE on homeschool, it was the shared time. It's the early middle college. They're looking to change some funding there. So every group comes up with, hey, if I can find 50, 100 million here, then we can support this item versus this item. Usually what we find is for the House, when we have that side by side that we usually show you, that gives some indication of where they're at with those items. Other questions?
It was warm before email today. Did you send us all that presentation you just did?
Yes.
Please. And then, once the House comes out, you'll send us an email update with.
Absolutely.
Any guess on the anomaly
If I had to put on my guessing gambling hat, I'm going to predict, we haven't chosen a number, but I'm going to say it's going to be probably more towards the 100 number versus the 125.
just hard to predict with these programs, the homeschool community, with our virtual students. There's a lot of in and out. Certainly, the trajectory is really positive for us. The other piece that Mark mentioned, and I don't know to re-highlight it, but we have 25 students next year who will be fifth-year seniors in that early college program. They're really only attached to the district for one course. It's typically an online course. We receive full FTE for those students. So we're realizing there's certainly a programmatic benefit to those kids and families that they've experienced over the last 3 years. Now we receive the financial benefit of supporting that program. That number is going to double next year to 50. And so you're starting to see a lot of these things kind of take a root that we started 5 and 6 years ago. But it's difficult to predict with any degree of certainty because the programs are so new to say, oh yeah, that trajectory is going to continue, right? Add more schools, add more virtual, add more early college. After 1 year of seeing it really pay off for us would probably be a misstep because, you know, if we're wrong after one year of data, that'd be a big mistake to make.
So what about an idea of reaching out to the paper and trying to get like a really nice front page story on the homeschool partnership we have, and highlighting
We do a lot of marketing with it, yeah. We've actually sent,
No, but I mean now, because
yeah, we have.
they're getting ready
We've actually
to
sent out our homeschool director to contiguous counties to actually.
highlight a couple of the kids that are going to graduate this
They
year.
met with a couple of the, Jared's doing a lot of that work right now with Michonne, our director, to highlight those programs. And she's actually gone out to homeschool communities in different counties and presented to them about our program. So it's really taking hold in a lot of areas.
So even with the Senate, like, that's what I was just trying to look at my PowerPoint on the phone. I think it's the Senate who, now they're homeschooled, but they went after virtual, so they want to fund virtual less than,
And the Senate's been the most aggressive of the three in the last few
Less than a
years
full
to
FTE.
downgrading the full FTE for the non-traditional
I
students.
guess the point I want to make is there's still cost to these students. It's not like they're free.
Well, what we responded to, Lisa, is the any place, anywhere, anytime education of students, right? But there is curriculum costs, technology costs,
Right.
teaching costs, online mentorship costs, all the support that goes into those students. Those costs don't change.
Right.
Right.
So you might get an increase in students, but you get an increase in cost as well, I guess.
That's a fact, because the more computers we're buying, the more online mentors we have, the more curriculum we're purchasing. All those costs, they go up. Yeah.
What are our numbers looking like on kindergarten?
At this point, after roundup this time around, very consistent with where we've been at in previous years at this point. Yeah, very consistent. And that's a really key differentiator, Mike, that when you look at the actual physical head count of students coming in the elementary, our numbers have been really solid, around 300 kindergartners a year the last 5-6 years now. So that physical head count of students is really consistent. So as each class gets to that 300 student per, then you're right around 4,000 students K-12,
Yeah.
right? And where the differentiator for Lapeer is, if we've got 200, 300, 400 virtual homeschool early college kids, that's going to offset that loss for us. It worked last year. It offset the loss of physical traditional students and then some. So people are going to be confused with that. Well, you guys say you're in a declining enrollment status. We are.
Because
Physical
your
traditional
seniors
student.
are more than
Right.
kindergarten.
We are bringing in non-traditional FT.
But what people don't realize is the seniors going out is more to the kindergarten.
To the tune of about 450 seniors, incoming 300 students in kindergarten. That's that formula of 150. And it's, when you look at it, it's fairly consistent over the last 6-7 years. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Takes us to the action items tonight. We have a consent grouping here. We have 4 items: the approval of the minutes of April 10th regular meeting, the overnight trip request for the boys varsity golf to Mount Pleasant, overnight trip request for Zimmer and the Lapeer High School varsity girls cross country to Lake City, and first reading policy 2261.
I'll move the reading of the minutes and the policies be waived and the consent agenda items be approved as presented.
Moved and
Aye.
Mrs. Becker?
Aye.
Mr. Keller says aye, motion carries. Takes us to the food service contract renewal.
I'll make a motion that the food service contract with Chartwell's be renewed for the 2019-2020 school year.
Support.
And moved and supported. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Mrs. Becker?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye.
Mrs. Putnam?
Aye.
Mr. Nolan? Mrs. Novak?
Aye.
Mrs. Peabody?
Aye.
Mr. Keller says aye, motion carries. Takes us to the ISD 2019-2020 General Fund Operating Budget Resolution. Motion.
I'll move that the resolution supporting the 2019-2020 ISD general fund operating budget be approved as presented.
Supported.
Supported. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Mrs. Peabody?
Aye.
Mrs. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Nolan? Aye. Mrs. Putnam?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye.
Mrs. Becker?
Aye.
Carries. And finally takes us to the assistant superintendent contract.
I'll make the motion, 2019-2020 contract for Assistant Superintendent Mark Rader be approved as presented.
I'll support that.
Moved and supported.
I just want to say thank you to Mark. We just appreciate him a lot. He's doing a lot. You always have the right answers and good answers for us, so just really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I know the work and it's not easy. You wish you had the crystal ball all the time, right?
That's for sure.
No, but he works really hard to make it up, let me tell you.
So the thing that I want to comment on, Mark, is too, is along the lines of, thank you for everything you do, but you've continued that tradition we have with Kevin, but you've taken it a step further. Him told us we can't yet, you help us find other ways to do things, so I really appreciate that.
Any other discussion? Questions?
And then he bakes too.
The baking might be better than the job performance.
It's like you got a total package.
He never mentioned that in the interview either, which made it a lot easier.
I didn't see that in the contract.
I know, I didn't either, but I saw him at Myers getting the stuff.
She did.
And that was late, exactly, it was after work hours. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, stop, really?
We will add it to the contract. Mrs. Becker?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye.
Mrs. Putnam?
Aye.
Mr. Nolan? Mrs. Novak?
Aye.
Mrs. Peabody?
Aye.
Kelly says aye, motion carries. That takes us to communications from the board. Any discussion or communications from the board tonight?
Congratulations to the robotics team.
Best year ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. And they did a great job, and I know they've got great coaches and a lot of volunteers that really work hard for those kids. So it's a great program. Thank you to the Mayfield teachers and staff and all of you. We really appreciate you being here. We know it's been a long day for you, so we just appreciate the work you're doing. It's amazing. Awesome.
I've only got one thing. I don't know what Friday it was, but went up and saw the high school play, Beauty and the Beast. I went kicking and screaming because I didn't want to go on a Friday night, but it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. I let Bill Sprudy know yesterday at the track meet. Fantastic job. Fantastic place.
I'd like to reiterate that. Mike had commented about that in the past, and we didn't buy tickets, and we got there at 6:30 Saturday night, and there were no tickets, it was sold out. But my husband wanted to leave, I'm like, no, we're gonna wait and see if we can get some tickets, you know. So someone had bought 5 and went up to Mr. Sprudy, and it was amazing. Like, those kids did really, that is a must-see show, no matter what. So it was wonderful to see. I agree, Brad. It was packed, sold out crowd, the kids. And I was happy to hear the 3 main characters are going into being there for their career. That was just awesome. One's going to California, and that's their career goal, which needs to be, because they can sing and perform. Mr. Hudson, the band director, he was Gaston, and you could just tell he was in his element. He loved every minute of what he was doing. It was awesome.
I just want to say real quick, as a proud Mayfield alumni, that I don't know if you guys noticed anything different about their presentation tonight versus all the other schools. This is not intended as a knock on the other schools, but what's the difference? They're all still here. We Mayfield people stick through it all.
We can't get rid of them.
And I'm glad you were, because oftentimes when we give presentations, the schools come in and we want to comment, and I hope you understand us, because we do like to ask questions, because we really are pleased and proud of what you're doing, and we want to know that, at least in our minds, that things are headed in the right direction. And you guys were here to hear some of the comments, and I really appreciate that, because half the time we're doing this, we're talking to an empty room.
Yeah.
You know, so the 3 people that watch it online, hopefully someone might say to someone someday, well, hey, they had some nice things to say. So very pleased that you were here to hear those things, and very pleased that you're here to share with us what you're doing. And the work with the little kids is just incredible. And as you all said, that's where it starts. And it's just, it's such a different world. I think back when I was in those same little classrooms in Mayfield, I can't imagine doing any of the things that you're doing. It's just incredible. And then I have a confession, I did not make the play this year. I feel terrible about that. I'm glad that others went, though. It is something not to be missed. And I said to my wife just the other day, I don't know what made me think of it. I said, hey, we need to get tickets to that play. And she said, well, it just happened. So in the future, I will try to make amends for that. But it is definitely something that everyone should see. And I hope that in our new plan going forward, and maybe our new auditoriums going forward, we have more seating so more people can see these things. Yeah.
A couple hundred more seats planned.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yep, we need it.
Yeah, I was going to ask if I could, and I don't know if it's appropriate during communication time, but I didn't see it because I don't know if y'all know, it was famously not on Facebook and hope to never be. But I am hearing that some people on Facebook, with respect to our bond proposal, are saying, well, how can we trust this board with more money? They already tax us every year. Yeah, we do. And it's the 18 mills that's renewed every year. So this isn't some special tax that's out there that we hit them with every single year. No, it's just what we required hourly. So,
And the current levy of 2.75 mils for the district is the lowest in the county.
Doesn't hurt my feelings you said that either, but it's just, I've heard these things, and I just encourage everyone, get the facts. Especially get the facts before you spread things and before you say things that they're easily for us to spell, but it's not so easy once it's broadcast out there. So,
And if and when this bond does pass, and we were to achieve the number of mills we're requesting, we'd be the second lowest in the county, even with the passage of the bond, in terms of the number of mills we levy to support our schools in comparative relevance to our 4 other county partners.
Thank you, Dr.
So,
Thank you.
if I can just piggyback on your comment, Mike,
Yeah,
because I usually do when we're doing the budget. 26 years have passed since Prop A. We do not get $7,871 per student without legally levying 18 non-homestead mills. If we do not levy those, we do not qualify to get any state per pupil dollars. So it's by constitution, not by this board, this administration, or any of your
And it was
organizations.
called the Headley rollback, and they need to research it if they don't understand.
well, I appreciate that, but I'm glad that you have brought those points up.
Thank you, I appreciate that, really do. I just want to thank all of you too, and I know Lisa Madden, her daughter and my son graduated, and I know since I've known her, she's had a passion for reading, and it all goes back to if you can't read, you'll be more challenged, but and I didn't hear anything negative, but I saw pictures on Facebook of the prom, so I want to congratulate those people that put that big event on, and we saw the pictures, and it looked beautiful, and
Yeah,
the place looked beautiful, and so anytime we have a successful prom, that's awesome.
I was going to say that my daughter went as a junior, her first prom, so it was quite exciting. The only thing from a parental aspect was it was in Chesterfield, and that's a ways for them to drive at 16, 17 years old. And I know it's difficult, I'm not saying it's not, they did a great job, but any chance of getting any closer for the future?
Amy Murphy
There's
said.
been some discussion about because it's a junior, senior prom,
I know
the
the
number of
number.
students, close to 500 that participate, makes it
It's
really
hard to
difficult to find a venue that's close.
There's a new venue.
So we've had some discussions about.
There's a new beautiful one in Elma, that has some connections.
Is that at the
high school? Huh?
No.
Yes.
And it's-
Yeah, but they re-
And they can
update.
fit at least six.
Well, they better get it done.
It's done.
Oh, that's ready?
Yeah, and it was still packed. I mean, even at this venue, Kylie said it was packed. I was kind of bummed because I was out of town on the weekend of the play. And I says, I don't know if there's any chance, but they did like 3 performances in one weekend. My thing would be if they do one weekend, they do 2, another weekend, 2. Then if somebody can't go, you have a shot. That's happened like 2 years in a row. It seems to be that weekend they do that. I want this play. I was like, how tough is it? Say do 2 weekends.
We did Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? I don't know if you can, but that'd be great.
Well, Mayfield, thank you again. It's been a really good week. I mean, seeing what you're doing, teaching and learning technology, we had a great meeting, all the positive things happening. And I just want to say, you know, Saturday, my youngest is graduating from Michigan, and Mrs. Taylor, you know where it all started, right? So,
Congratulations to him.
they're all done. He's going to be going to go to graduate school in Michigan again if he accepted that. So, just thank you for everything, because I know where it all started, and that's what I said. I see what you're doing, and I'm telling you, you know, years from now, we're going to be blowing people away with what's going on. We really are. See, the building blocks are there, and the energy is there, the passion is there. I can see it. And, it's just exciting time. And in response to the Facebook, all I can say is that we are an education institution, and it sounds like we need to put out some good education. Certainly will. We need to start teaching people because, and then again, the student, you know, the student is ready sometimes to learn, sometimes not, but we have to put that information out so people have the information, and those bad scenarios just don't keep happening. One person takes it, they add to it, and the next thing you know, it's, you know, we're asking for some huge tax increase or something.
Right. Okay. Mr. Wondry. Thank you, Mr. President. Ditto, great job, guys, awesome stuff, awesome information, and it's really important for the board and our community to see. I really love the fact that you share the running record with us because the actual kind of nitty-gritty of collecting the data and how it's utilized and used by teachers is a really important piece because I think it's one thing to show the videos, it's great to see the kids interacting, but how are we live, what does it look like, how does it feel? That's so important. It's important to the board. You know, those goals that you talked about tonight, the board goal in particular, 2.1 and 2.1C. Mayfield is a representative of that, but it's happening in every building. And that's important to know. It's got a little bit of a Mayfield flair, right? The staff owns it and does what they want to do to make it happen. But these practices can't be isolated to one building. That's the one thing we've been really proud of is the implementation of these goals and the expectation that we're all doing things in a similar fashion. Robotics, absolutely great year. Two high school teams in a high school town of this size that are both competing at the World Championships in Detroit is an unbelievably remarkable feat. It's not something that we can overlook, but we had one team make it to the, losing in the semifinals, strike zone, 1 point away. They were seeded first in their division, but the fact that we're producing that kind of talent is remarkable. It can't be overstated. This is a fantastic year for our families that Jared and I were talking about the budgets for these groups, the amount of money that are going through these budgets, it's local sponsorships, the parents involved. It's amazing. I wanted to highlight a Lynch student, a young lady, Jenna Hill. The Michigan Reading Association every year produces a magazine featuring student writing called Kaleidoscope. And Jenna Hill is on the front page, one of our district coaches, Karen Ullman, front page of the County Press, receiving that recognition. So annually they publish between 65 and 100 student pieces, and Jenna was one of the young ladies that was selected. So
I had one also.
you have one too,
Yeah,
Patty? Well, why don't you put you on the front page?
Well, yeah, I don't think she attended the
Oh,
award
the-
ceremony
so,
or whatever,
okay.
but she.
What was her name?
Trinity Lewinsky.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She wrote
Yeah.
about a bat that was treating her,
So, less than 100 kids, 2 of them from Lapeer School, so very exciting stuff. And then just a reminder, May 6th is going to be our first district meeting to talk about, we're calling them priority committees. Essentially, we've identified 4 committees, kind of the big ticket items of the work of the bond, and going to ask volunteers, teachers, staff members, principals, parents, community members, board members to come participate. And the task of that group is going to be identify the top 10 priorities the district needs to consider when designing, fill in the blank, this facility or this program. Just continued commitment to our desire to get feedback and help from our staff and our community and what this bond looks like. It's got to be ours, yours, all of ours together. So May 6th at Zemmer, 6 p.m. Looking forward to seeing as many folks there as possible. Spread the word. It's open anyway.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Aye.